everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello and welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. I am Maritza Barone and I am very happy that you have plugged the headphones in and have joined us here on this podcast. Today, I absolutely loved this episode because I chat to Emma Campbell and it was literally for me 50 minutes of pure joy, and I really hope that it will be for you too. I met Emma when I lived in Fiji for 10 months last year in 2021, and she was such a truly lovely person to connect with in a new country where I really didn't know many people. Emma and I in this episode share a real conscious conversation about her life as an expat, working now as the Chief Marketing Officer at Tourism Fiji, how she navigated being new to the role as tourism ceased to exist for 2 years, how emotional intelligence flows into her unique leadership style, and her recent experience with sobriety over the last 400 plus days, which she makes so incredibly relatable to, I'm sure, many of us. There'll be many aha moments in this discussion for anyone wanting to shift something that perhaps isn't sitting with them anymore and spark them to make a significant positive change in the pursuit of happiness, which also happens to be part of the tagline for Tourism Fiji, where happiness finds you. Huge thanks to Emma for her raw share on her personal and her work life, and for doing so in her brilliant Scottish accent, which I love. Well, welcome, Emma. Thank you for joining me here today on Things You Can't Unhear. I'm absolutely so pumped to have you here and to have a conversation with you like this.
Bula bula. Lovely to be here.
I love it. I'm missing Fiji so much. So for everyone who might not know, I lived in Fiji for about 10 months in 2021, and I met Emma there, and she was so open and generous with her contacts and her time. And you really helped me, Emma, integrate into Fijian life, and I miss it so much.
We missed you as well. You're very missed, but glad you've found your feet in the sunshine.
Yes, we definitely have, which is good. Nice middle ground. But there's definitely something so special about Fiji, and it's not only the pink sunsets and the coconuts and the palm trees and the sunshine. It's there's definitely something so incredibly special.
100%. And I genuinely think it's the sense of community. And, I find that like the lifestyle is amazing, and we have loads of adventures and we get to go to islands and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that's really special for me is just working with my team on a day-to-day basis and getting to hear their stories and, understanding what their looks like, what their ambitions are, all that side of things. And then just how everyone pulls together and makes things happen when it needs to happen. Like there's a real sense of community that I think is lost in other places, or that's kind of diminished a little bit. And Fiji's still really, really got that.
Yeah, it definitely all comes down to the people, and that was definitely my experience too. I know you've been there a lot longer than I have, and had worked with a team within an organization too, which is, a great way to integrate yourself into the community when you get to a new place and living the expat life. So tell me firstly about your position, because you've got a bloody great job. And I'm sure it was a competitive to even land that position. Living in Fiji and working in marketing for tourism is pretty special.
Yeah. Look, I love working in tourism, and I had worked in tourism back in Scotland for Visit Scotland, our national tourism body, and then I left and did some backpacking, ended up in Australia. And in Australia, I just kind of grabbed the first job that I could get that would promise me sponsorship so that I could stay. And I had a fabulous, fabulous role and a great career with Hallmark Cards in Australia, which was, you know, just an amazing period of learning. I was really, really lucky. But when I left Hallmark, I decided I wanted to get back into the tourism space. Like I was very intentional about that because I missed it, and I missed just that real energy in tourism. So I went to work for Museums Victoria, who are the big museums organisation in Melbourne, and again, an amazing career there. Was working for a small hospitality business while I was having my babies and you know, working part-time, etc. And my husband at that point in life was sort of a bit bored with work, and I was working part-time, and we agreed that I would go back and work full-time and that he would have a little bit of time as a stay-at-home dad. And I just had these like super itchy feet, you know, like I was like, I've just had 2 kids and life's been sort of, you know, like I just felt like we were sort of getting stuck in a bit of a rut. And I thought, oh, I'm going to see if there's any roles out there internationally, and literally jumped onto Seek and, you know, had a look at what was out there, and ended up connected to a recruiter who spoke to me about a role in Fiji. And it was all very sort of organic, and it was kind of like the role just happened at the same time as I put the feelers out. It was like I kind of manifested it. Yeah. And I don't know whether I did or not, but it just all worked out really well. And I was just so determined, you know, when I found out about the job, I was like, look, I'm a great leader. I'm really great with teams. You know, I do have tourism experience, maybe not as much as you would like, but I'm super adaptable. And what I can do is I can, you know, commit to coming in and really working with your teams to build that team and build the marketing capacity. Yeah, so I got the job, and like I always laugh because my second interview with the organisation, I had to bring, it was actually in Fiji. First one was on Zoom, second one was in Fiji, and I had to bring my husband and my daughter because she was only 10 months, so she was still breastfeeding. And my boss, or you know, the person who was interviewing me, took us for a drive around Nandi just to show us the different spots that we could live in. And I was having to say, oh, do you mind if we just pull over so I can feed the baby? And luckily he was really cool and relaxed about that. So it was quite an odd scenario to be in terms of going for a job interview, but it all worked out. And then, you know, we're making an international move with 2 small children, which may seem crazy, but it was perfect because Fiji is the perfect place for small kids. And then my role here, I'm Chief Marketing Officer. I lead brands, website, social media for Tourism Fiji. We market Fiji as a destination across the world. Obviously, we've just come out of 2 years where our destination was actually closed. But reflecting on that, you know, it might not have been the job that I expected when I started because I couldn't actually do business as usual. But there's been a real sense that I was meant to be here in this season, really just to, you know, support the team and make things happen in many ways, and, you know, just give them that consistent leadership. And it's been such a blessing and a real honour to be here through the pandemic, even though things haven't been as I expected them to be.
What year did you get there, Emma?
2019. So I was in my role for about 9 months before the pandemic hit. So I was kind of finding my feet and, you know, figuring out what our campaigns were going to look like. We were in the midst of a major campaign when we got the call to say, you know, the borders are closing, so cancel everything. So yeah, it was a really, really strange time.
A very, very tricky time to navigate. And I remember when we spoke and it was just about to hit 365 days. I've got goosebumps talking about it, but it was about to hit 365 days with 0 COVID cases in Fiji. And that's when I was over there. And you said to me, we're just about to launch a celebration to celebrate the fact that we have had no COVID in Fiji for 1 year, for 365 days. And you said, I don't feel right about it. I feel like something's up.
Yeah, it was so strange. We were doing this party on the beach and everyone was excited about it. And I was like, oh man, I've just got a bad feeling about this. And I think everyone's like, why are you not getting excited? Why are you being so resistant? And which isn't like me. I'm usually really open and, get in amongst things. It's just something felt uncomfortable. And yeah, I got a phone call the night before to say, can you ask the team to cancel everything, but do it in a discreet way because, that there's possibly going to be an announcement tomorrow. And yeah, we got our first case on that 365-day mark, and that was sort of the start of Fiji's second wave. Our first wave, we only had 18 cases. Second wave was Delta, so it did kind of rip through quite quickly.
Yeah, I remember it. Don't worry about that. I remember it. I think I still have a little bit of PSD around it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us probably do. So, I think you navigated that. I mean, it would be a very hard position to be in from a tourism perspective to navigate these times, especially in this industry. You did an amazing job and you guys have bounced back so wonderfully. I mean, the campaigns that are coming out of what you're doing right now are second to none. You've got Rebel Wilson and the delivery and the message of what she shares is so great.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those ads. Can you tell us about the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, obviously through the pandemic, as I said, we weren't working on business as usual. So we were sort of doing a little bit of social media and campaign stuff, but we were focusing really on things like our health and safety program, which is awesome. Like Fiji has got really amazing industry-wide health and safety protocols. So really just getting the basis right for welcoming tourists back. And we also worked really closely with the Ministry of Health on the vaccination rollout. And so, we had all the basis right for people to come and have a really safe holiday. And that was all fabulous. We needed that. But what we also needed to do was really inspire people. So we leaned into our brand platform, which is Where Happiness Finds You. And we went out with the message open for happiness. Really, I just think that message was just perfect. And it was great because our whole industry adopted it. And it just really, really landed incredibly well. Even the government were using it in their communications. So we were just completely aligned as a destination. And then in terms of the campaign, we knew that we had to do something that got us huge cut through and really told the world that Fiji was open. So we had to take a slightly different tactic than what we would normally do. And that was to work with a high profile person. And Rebel was just perfect. She's really well known in the Australian market. She's well known in the US market. She's also known in other markets like New Zealand and the UK. So the markets that we were sort of immediately opening up to, she had great recognition. And she's also a real traveler. So her experience in Fiji, she was quite happy staying for a bit longer to do photography. She threw herself into everything. She's really active. So she had a really adventurous trip, even though at that stage, when we were filming, we were very much confined to the island environment because we weren't fully open yet so she was technically in quarantine while we were shooting an ad. And, that had so many challenges. Luckily, Rebel and her team were amazing to work with, but we had to get them all special permission to get in the country, and we had to make sure that there was a robust testing procedure going on across the board, across the crew. So it was a really challenging campaign to work on, but I think the results have been amazing. And, you know, the advertising value that we got out of working with somebody like Rebel, who is really high profile, was phenomenal. And we could never have afforded to spend that amount of money on media. So we got maximum eyeballs for a much lower budget than what we would normally you know, have to pay for that level of exposure. So we're delighted with the campaign. Going forward, we'll probably look at different ways of communicating Fiji and our brand, and really focusing on the diversity of experience. But for reopening, I'm really, really pleased with that strategy, and it really delivered. Beautiful.
And you are now open for happiness. I think COVID has taught a lot of us to you know, seek the pursuit. We're now in the pursuit of happiness. I think a lot of us are seeking out new experiences, new, you know, adventures for themselves, their family, their partners, their careers, whatever it is in their lives. And you know, Fiji's been a great place to do that. But you look like you've been doing that for years. You've been actively seeking happiness. I want to know more about your lifestyle as a family in Fiji.
Yep.
And what that feels like to live as an expat on a tropical island such as Fiji.
Yeah. Like, we love it, and I think that's the first thing. You know, doing it with small kids is actually really easy. Little kids are just so adaptable. You know, they weren't attached to their friends or anything like that when we moved, so it made life really, really easy. We've found a lovely little school community that they're really happy in, and they've been there now for nearly 3 years, so they're like the OGs, you know. Yeah. I think my son gets called Uncle Nico because he's, you know, one of the first kids that was in that little school. But, you know, I think what I love most about our lifestyle is just this kind of sense of freedom. And that sort of comes, you know, I've been an expat for a long time. I was in Australia for 12 years before we moved to Fiji, so away from, you know, my family and everything. For my husband, he's always grown up, you know, as part of a community, and, you know, he's from a really fabulous, lovely family, and that has meant he's always had loads of stuff going on. Like, there's always been lots and lots of commitments, and that just naturally has happened. And that's the thing about Fiji that we've actually really enjoyed, is that there's never really any commitments. You know, we sort of often wake up on a weekend and go, what are we going to do today? And we can just decide. And we've got a lovely group of friends who have all got small kids, but there's no obligation to do anything. So, you know, we're often on island day trips. You know, we went zip sliding the other week. We do pretty much everything that tourists would do, but we do it on an ongoing basis. So from a lifestyle perspective, it's really amazing. You know, getting a couple of nights away on an island over a weekend is just great fun. And general life is, you know, it can be tricky living in Fiji. You know, my husband is a stay-at-home dad, which has challenges in itself, particularly during a pandemic when the kids can't go to school. And he needs to do things like, you know, go to 6 different shops to get everything that he needs. And, you know, you can't just pop into Woolies or Kmart and, you know, buy what you need. You kind of need to hunt for things in Fiji. So that can have challenges, but he's actually developed a real love for that. Like, he kind of enjoys the hunt and the knowing where to get all the best stuff. So we've really adapted to that. You know, things like banking can be complex, and, you know, when I need to go to the bank, I actually call my husband and say, can you meet me there and bring coffees, and like we have a little bit of a date in the bank, because we're going to be waiting for ages. But in general, we really enjoy the simple lifestyle, and, you know, some weekends we do very little. We hang about in the house, and, you know, we have a swim in the pool and relax, and it's just lovely to have so much quality family time. You know, my job is big. Like, I work sometimes long hours and sometimes I'm away, so time that we have together as a family is just so important, and it's really nice that we can choose that doing whatever we want to do.
Listening to all that, it's actually bringing a little tear to my
Yeah.
eyes because, yes, there's definitely the highs and lows of living in Fiji, and, the delays and finding the things that you need and all of that. Yes, I remember just a small trip to the post office taking me half a day to get completed, and it was like a 5-minute drive up the road. So it was just those things that things moved much slower than we're used to the fast-paced Melbourne or Australian lifestyle or a city lifestyle that we're used to. But I think that's where the beauty of it really lies, is that it forces you to slow down. And you touched on, the no commitment thing. That was another big thing, because your husband, Rob's an Italian background, isn't he?
Yeah.
Same as my husband's family. And there's, lots of us in the family and lots of birthdays and celebrations. And every weekend was always booked up with something. And then we had the same experience as you, moving away and away from your friends and family. You become such a tight-knit team, and free to make any decisions you'd like to make at that particular time. Do I want to do that? No, I don't actually feel like it right now, so I won't. There's a huge sense of freedom in our time and what we choose to do, which is quite liberating when you've never really had that freedom before, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that whole joy of missing out thing as opposed to the fear of missing out. And it took us a while to adjust at the start, but then the pandemic hit and we didn't even have the opportunity to jump on a plane and see people, and that was quite scary at the start, but then we eventually found quite a lot of joy in it, and that we were just this little unit and we could kind of do whatever we want, and we're actually okay. We're okay just us, which is really nice. I mean, the other thing is, now that borders have opened, visitors are starting to come, and that is amazing. So, my husband's parents have just arrived and they're staying for a month, and that is a month of pure quality time. So, like a month of having people living in your house and showing them around Fiji and introducing them to your friends and your lifestyle, that almost feels as quality as what we would have had in 12 months of heaps of different engagements and seeing people fleetingly in Melbourne. So there's something nice about that as well.
I 100% agree with that. I had my sister-in-law here with us in Queensland for a couple of days, and we had this beautiful morning where we went for a hike and then went for brunch, and we had this amazing one-on-one time that we never would have found time to do when we're in Melbourne. So moving away from family and friends can definitely be hard, but when you do connect, it's much more meaningful and important. I want to talk about when you Fiji in particular, or a location like Fiji, when you live in that type of environment, it's almost like holiday mode is on all the time, and you find yourself with a cocktail in hand more days than you don't, and you almost, you're living it, but you're in holiday mode. Did you find? I mean, I know the journey you've been on, and I want you to share that with everyone. But I want to know how that rolled out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a really, I've been on a really interesting journey. So I was a huge party girl. Like, I was 6 years in Melbourne on my own before I met my husband. And my husband likes to party as well. So like, I'd be out drinking every weekend, burning candle at both ends. And that was just life, absolutely normal life. And then, of course, met my husband, things calmed down a bit. And then I sort of spent, I think, between, getting pregnant and stopping breastfeeding, it was about 5.5 years all up. I breastfed my babies until they were telling me, take your uniform off, mummy, I want milky. And then I was like, oh, I probably need to stop. So I'd been breastfeeding Molly till she was nearly 3, and then I stopped feeding Molly. And I think even though I would still have a glass of wine or whatever while I was breastfeeding, I was always limited, and didn't have the freedom. And what I found was, stopped feeding Molly, and I was in tropical islands, reasonably stressful job. And I kind of sort of hit the drinking a little bit hard, and not in any way that was sort of worrying or concerning, but what I found was that, you know, the Friday glass of champagne, watching the sunset, became Thursday, became Wednesday, and you know, then we would be socializing with friends at the weekends, and there is just constantly a reason to have a drink in Fiji, right? Like, it's like, oh, the sun's looking good, let's have a nice glass of wine and watch the sunset. Or there's a cyclone coming, stock up your cupboards with booze because it's going to be a cyclone party. You know, you've had a fun day at work, you've had a hard day at work, you just, when you're in that holiday mode, it just feels like you could constantly be drinking. And plus the tourism industry is notoriously, you know, this networking event after networking event. So I think I stopped breastfeeding in the September, and by the Christmas, I had this niggle in my head of, you're drinking too much or you're thinking about alcohol too much. So I was constantly trying to kind of moderate, you know, sort of saying, oh, I'm going to have 4 alcohol-free days this week, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, like giving myself rules. I'm not going to drink wine, I'll only drink bubbles, I'll and you know, over the Christmas period, I hit it quite hard. And when I look back at pictures, this is sort of start of last year, I had got a bit puffy and I'd put on weight, and you know, I think there was just something in my head that was saying, this is taking up too much space in your life. And so I had decided I would do Feb fast, and mid-January I had like one of those monster, I mean, maybe not everybody gets these, but I had a monster hangover. Like, I had been at a party, a day drinking. Everybody was like, oh, you were fine, you seemed okay. And the next day I just could not move myself from bed, and I just thought, I need to stop doing this to myself. So I did Feb fast. I actually got dengue fever in February, so I had sort of 2 weeks of dengue. So when it got to the end of February, I was like, I feel like I've cheated. Like, you had dengue, you weren't going to drink anyway. So I did March as well. And I used to always, in my younger years, when I was a bit of a party girl, I would often do a month off, you know, like my friends and I would do dry July or October or something, just to kind of prove to myself that I could do it. So I did February and March. And at the end of March, I was like, this is kind of working quite well. I'll go for 100 days. And it was never my intention to become a sober person, because I never really thought that I had an issue with alcohol. I just drank the same as pretty much everybody else in my life. But in that period of doing 100 days, we had a bit of a holiday. I had my kid's birthday party. I had multiple, you know, a networking event with work, multiple different things that I would have normally done with alcohol. And I had read this book that said a great tactic if you're trying to cut back alcohol is to look back at the event that you've just been through and ask how alcohol would have improved it. So I used to go through that tactic. I'd wake up in the morning feeling great, do a workout, and think to myself, what would alcohol have added to the evening that I had last night? And I never once had a scenario where I felt like alcohol would have made an event or an activity or anything better in any way, when I actually critically looked at it. And like, I loved drinking, I love wine, I love it all. Sometimes I miss it, sometimes I crave it, but if I look at it really critically, it never improves anything for me. It means that I wake up either with a bit of a sore head, or I don't have a great sleep, or I miss my workout, or I'm not as present with the kids. So after my 100 days, I was like, I feel awesome. I've been working out solidly. I mean, I shouldn't be vain, but I'd lost a bit of weight. Like, I just felt fabulous. And I thought, right, let's see if I can do a year. And I like a target, like I like to be going towards something. And I felt, and I probably still feel a bit weird about going, I will never drink again. But my 365 days actually happened this time, and I passed over a year on the 30th of January, so I think I'm up to, I don't know, over 400 days, and I just have no intentions at this stage of ever drinking again. Like, I felt like taking it out my life completely was a feeling of freedom. Like, I realize now that my whole life I've always been a little bit concerned about how much I drink, and that's why I've always done the Octobers and the let's have a break. I've always been kind of keeping myself in check, and taking that away has just been, I feel so free. So I don't think I ever really truly had a drinking problem, but I think what I was an alcoholic waiting to happen. And I think there's lots of people who are the same. And I'm just so glad that I have taken myself out of that potential scenario. And I feel like a way better human. And I often say to my husband, I really like this version of me. You know, it's usually after I've got up early and done a workout and all that kind of stuff. But I'm really pleased with this version of myself. And removing alcohol has played a huge role in that.
Wow. You know what? I bet you, I am 100% certain that so many people listening to this completely relate to what you have said. I'm definitely one of them. I've almost got a love-hate relationship with alcohol, whereas, you know, I do really enjoy that glass of rosé and watching a sunset. But then if there's more than 3 glasses, I feel like absolute hell, and I really regret it the next day. And like you said, you miss out on things that you wanted to do the next day, or you're short with the people around you, or you just feel off, and you like start to think about whether that actually is serving you and is actually doing anything for you. And you know, you have half an hour or a couple of hours of feeling, you know, fun and free, but then you have double the amount of time feeling gross or icky later on. So it's that balance that we're completely missing.
And like I was, you know, out of my friendship group, I was probably never the biggest drinker, but I always had the worst hangovers. Like, I have got hangover stories from all over the world. Like, you know, remember that time I had to get a taxi driver to pull over. Like, I had the worst hangovers. And I thought to myself, you know, if anything else was making me feel like this, I would immediately remove it from my life. What is it about drinking that makes you keep going? You know? And it's just so socially acceptable, and it's really addictive. And you know, you're always chasing that little high that you get. And I've done a lot of research. Only that lasts 20 minutes. The kind of buzz that you get lasts 20 minutes, and then that's why, you know, for me, I was never somebody who could comfortably stop at 1. I would stop at 1, but my little voice in my head would be going, oh, you want another one, you really want another one. So and not having that voice anymore is just so helpful. Whereas my husband, he still drinks. He is someone who can quite comfortably have a beer with a snag and not think about another one. So we're just wired differently. So he doesn't need to stop, but I definitely feel like stopping has been massively beneficial. I really hope that it's something that I continue, because I can't see a positive role for alcohol in my life at all anymore.
We're all wired so completely differently, aren't we? And I feel like our bodies tell us when it's time to, if you're listening intuitively to what your body's trying to tell you, your body tells you and is very clear. And I know right now, and I'm actually going to make a pledge right now, because my body has been telling me not to drink wine for a very long time, because I get eczema under my hairline and around my ear every time I drink wine. Yet I continue after it heals to drink wine. And I'm saying it now. I'm choosing the time frame very carefully. I will do 3 months with 0 wine. Okay. I'm saying it.
And I'd highly recommend doing more than a month, because I've done those months before. And, you know, I spoke to somebody recently who said to me, you know, I did dry January. I felt no different, no benefits. And I was like, yeah, I hear you. You need to do the 100 days, like, because that's when I felt lasting change, and I had enough experiences that I could look back and go, oh, that was worth it. The other thing is, there's heaps of great alternatives now, and I'm desperately trying to get some alternatives over to Fiji at the moment. Everybody that comes is bringing a bottle of non-alcoholic bubbles for me, and I don't love them all the time, but things like we went out to Cloud9 for our exec team Christmas day out, and Cloud9's a floating bar in the middle of the ocean. It's just like look it up on Instagram, it's amazing. And that for me was like, that's a real drinking moment. And so I took they let me bring my own bottle of non-alcoholic bubbles, and just being able to sit and have a glass of bubbles while I was in that setting felt really lovely. But I was, again, really, really grateful that it didn't have the impact, because I know what would have happened. I'd have spent the whole day sitting drinking champagne. I wouldn't have gone snorkeling, you know, like, so instead I had a really rich experience, but I didn't feel like I had missed out on anything.
Yeah, it's definitely a habit, in holding something and being part of that, sort of dynamic with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there are so many amazing alternatives, especially in Australia. I know, like you said, it would be hard to get them over.
Not in Fiji.
Anyone in Fiji who wants to start an alcohol-free drinks range, I think the market is definitely there. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of brands that have, you know, jumped on board with this at the moment here. If you need me to send you anything, just let me know, and I'll send some over. But yeah, it's just the habit of having something in your hand and being social with other people, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Emma. I really feel as though a lot of people would get so much out of your experience, and having it been so recent as well. And there's a whole conversation about, I mean, you don't have to have you're not an addict. You've never been an alcoholic, but you didn't like the relationship that you had with alcohol anymore, and you decided to do something about it. And that can go for anything in our lives. You didn't like the relationship you had with your work or your life balance. So you've actively made changes around the things that weren't making you happy. And I absolutely love that. And it links straight back to your pursuit of happiness. Like you feel better, you feel happier, you're lighter, you're healthier, you're less puffy, you're spending more time with your kids, and you know, it's working out positively for you. And you know, you don't have to also put that pressure on yourself to say, I will never drink again, because I mean, that too can trigger people to say, you know, that's too much pressure.
Absolutely. I think for now, I'm actively making the choice not to drink alcohol. And let's see what happens.
My friend is probably 4 months sober, and probably was very similar to you. And she just says I'm not drinking at the moment. They're her words. So I think people around her are more open to that as well, when it doesn't feel as polarizing. When she said, oh no, I don't drink, I'm not drinking at the moment, and it's just left at that.
And I think the other thing as well is, you know, like, and I have been sort of using the line, I was an alcoholic waiting to happen, because I actually believe that, and I'm also not ashamed of that, because, you know, these things it's so easy to fall into a trap of addiction, and it's not, you know, it's not necessarily anyone's fault. And for people who actually choose to do something about it, they should feel really proud of that. So, you know, like, because I have had people saying, oh, you know, so like they're almost embarrassed asking me about my past, in case I say to them, I was an alcoholic. Like, so people are almost shying away from the topic, and I'm like, no, I'm proud of this, and actually I'm proud of the fact that I recognized something wasn't good for me, and I removed it. So I think, you know, like, you don't need to share too much, but for me, I'm just like, I'm really, really open about it, because if it inspires other people, awesome, and if it doesn't, that's fine as well, because everybody's relationship with things is their own. It's very individual.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. Now, I want to touch on something else that you did in 2020. You became a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, and that helped you with the sort of the leadership, the positive leadership that you roll out in your work. Can you talk to me about what that was and what led you to that experience of becoming a certified emotional intelligence practitioner?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of years ago, after I'd had my son, who's now 6, and returned to work, I was feeling a little bit lost within myself, as I think many return to work mums feel. Like, it's just such a, you know, when I think back, it's just such a crazy time, and I'm so mindful of that when mums are returning to work, you know, and really creating an open space where they can talk about it and, you know, have room to pump milk if they want to and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I got on the Melbourne Tourism Leadership Programme course, which is a course that they do in Melbourne, and you know, you have to apply to go on it. And it was while I worked at the museum that I managed to get a place on it, and it was all about positive psychology and, you know, leading with emotional intelligence. And it was just the most, you know, when I think back, it was such a life-changing experience for me. And I'd always, you know, I think naturally I've always been quite an intuitive leader and really been able to get to know my people so that I can help them, and then really tailored my leadership approach to them. But then when I learned about positive psychology, I was able to go, oh, okay, I think that's what I do, and let's learn even more tools and tactics to make sure that I get even stronger in that space. So one of the things that we did do on that was GENOS, emotional intelligence, you know, testing, and I decided to get certified in that particular way of certifying people, which was really amazing. You know, through the pandemic, I just wanted to learn some new things while we were sort of in this kind of crazy period at work. And that really helped me with an expanded toolkit on how to lead teams and assess them and you know, really have great conversations around their emotions in the workplace and what roles their emotions have. And you know, everybody's got emotions. We shouldn't be ashamed of them. And you know, I want my team to bring their whole selves to work, but in a way that, you know, is still productive. So, you know, we've got a really strong team here. A lot of my leadership practices are really staked on finding out their strengths and using more of their strengths, as opposed to always focusing on trying to fix the weaknesses, and really just allowing them to be very open about where they're at in their life, so that as a team we can kind of rally around and make sure that we can support everybody within the teams, just so that we're constantly as high performing as possible. So a good example is our Monday morning meeting. We all, it's a mindful meeting, so we come in and, you know, we commit that we'll be on time. Technology, we use technology for the meeting, but apart from that, it's not allowed. You know, like, turn your phone off, turn it over, don't be distracted. We are all present for each other because we are a team and we're going to smash through the week regardless of what we've got going on. So we take 3 deep breaths at the start of the meeting, and then we all share our emoji of the week or our GIF of the week. Because I need to be down with the kids, and that's just been it's been the most amazing experience in terms of building trust, because I think for people who, you know, they don't need to share everything, they share what they're comfortable with. But if there's something going on at home, like my baby's got an ear infection and I'm worried, or I was up all night, or, you know, somebody has had a bereavement or whatever, the team are now at the stage where they share exactly how that's making them feel. And with that in mind, the rest of the team are able to identify, okay, one of my team members is going through a hard time just now, I'm going to step up and help them and support them. And I think sometimes by just sharing that, it sort of means that you can kind of almost let it go to a certain extent and be productive in the workplace, because you know you've got that level of support around you. So yeah, just some of the tools and tactics that I've been using to help get the most out of my amazing team here in Fiji, and I've definitely found that, you know, empowering them, allowing them to be themselves, understanding what their ambitions and motivations are, has allowed me to be a much better leader, and it's meant that we're able to work together to make things happen. So it's kind of cool.
I knew I was going to love this conversation, Emma. I just love everything you said then, and I completely agree with all of that. I feel as though when we allow ourselves to share more openly with others, especially in a work environment, you connect on a completely different level. And I know from my past, I've had so many jobs where you felt so close with your work colleagues, but then you one of you left and you caught up outside of work, you really had nothing to talk about because all you ever spoke about was work and you didn't know each other on a deeper level. And I feel as though it's so important to share. I mean, even in an argument, if you get what's harboring on something that's harboring inside you off your chest, you instantly feel relieved and better and at ease. And it's the same with the work environment. If people know you're on struggle street that particular morning, or you're not feeling your best because of X and Y, and you've let them know, then you're right, you share and then you move on, and other people are aware. They're not playing the guessing game of what's going on with your feelings and emotions.
Yeah. And it's sort of, it's the whole, you only ever see the tip of the iceberg. And this isn't about me having a team who are all best friends or who all love each other. And one of my team actually said to me the other day, I'm working really, really well with another individual. And I never thought that would happen in a million years. But since we've been doing the Monday meeting, I now really get this person. And it's meant that I'm able to work with them much, much better. And I know that they'll never go for a coffee together or go out for dinner together, or, but there's just this kind of mutual respect for each other's skills, but also for this person as a human. And I think that's been amazing. So it's kind of just cut out any sort of politics, because we're all just kind of like, we're all individuals, we all go through stuff, and we actually have one goal, which is to work together to do a really good job and get people back to the country. So having all that going on is just really helped. That there's not as much conflict, and even though people haven't become best friends, I'm okay with that, as long as they get each other and can work well together.
Emma, you're an incredible person, an incredible leader, that's for sure. You create marketing campaigns that absolutely go viral, so I'm assuming you're pretty good at that as well. You're a great mum. You've had a wonderful journey in your life, career and otherwise, and you've lived adventures and you've traveled, and you've ticked the things off the list that are important to you. But I always ask this question to anyone who comes on the show, and I have pre-warned you, so you should be a little bit thankful. It's a big question, and obviously the reason why I started this podcast is because I heard something that I couldn't unhear. But what is something that you have heard in your life that you could not unhear, and that forced you or sparked positive changes within your life?
I'll try and do this one without getting emotional, but my mum passed away when I was quite young, like I was 25, 26. So I was still very much in the kind of formative years of my life. And she had me when she was very young, like she was literally graduating from uni and found out she was pregnant. So it meant that her plans for her life very much changed, because she kind of went from this cool, young, hip chick to being a young mum. So for me, when my mum was very ill, she said something along the lines of, I'm good. She said something along the lines of, you're everything that I ever hoped you would be, and you're everything that I would have wanted to be. And that's really inspired me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
It's inspired me to kind of do crazy things, like apply for a job in Fiji when I'm still breastfeeding a baby, and it's inspired me just to continuously have adventures, because there was a lot of stuff that she would have loved to have done, and she had no regrets, but she couldn't do it because she was a young mum, and often, when I said I like this version of me, I also think, would she love this version of me? I think she'd be like super proud to sober Emma.
Would be so proud. And again, you've given me goosebumps all over, and I really honestly appreciate you sharing that with us. And the reason why we do this, I say this a lot, is that when we share in this way so openly and vulnerably, it really can help other people in their own personal experiences and lifetimes. So I know that would have hurt, and I know it's hard to say those things, and you're going back into those old emotions and that pain, but it definitely helps other people in their life and in their journey. So I really, truly and wholeheartedly thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for this beautiful interview. I've really enjoyed every second of it. And for people who want to get in touch with Emma, and she's got a really fun Instagram page. Do you want to share those details? Because I'll probably get the details wrong if I say
that. It's at our Fiji footsteps. So that just kind of documents our life.
Our Fiji footsteps.
Yep.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a great adventure and a snapshot of your life in Fiji as a local, as an expat, as a young family, as a working woman, and doing amazing things, and also navigating your way through sobriety, which is really
I shared a lot on there about sobriety, because it is something that I'm really proud of.
Well, thank you again, Emma. This has been a really fascinating chat. Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.